Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be reviewing They Called Us Enemy by George Takei with Justin Eisinger, Stephen Scott, and illustrated by Harmony Becker. And this is a graphic memoir, an autobiographical graphic novel profiling George Takei's childhood when he was interned as a Japanese American during World War II. This just came out on July 16th. This was pre-ordered and it arrived about a week ago, but I was reading a few other things at the time, so I wanted to finish up before I moved on to this. And I started reading it yesterday, and I just finished it like about a half an hour ago at the time of this video. You'll probably be able to infer that with that information, but I absolutely loved this book, and I highly recommend it. I've always loved George Takei. I'm not even the biggest Star Trek fan. I mean, I'm like a casual fan, but I just love George Takei. You know, he's a national treasure. How could you not love him? The book begins around the bombing of Pearl Harbor and the U.S.'s entry into the war and the growing anti-Japanese sentiment of the time. The Takeis are just an average American family trying to live their lives peacefully, who just almost in an instant have their whole world taken from them. One passage that really stuck out to me was early on in the book, where Takei mentions that there was no evidence that anyone of Japanese descent was conspiring against the US government, but to the government that was the evidence. The government couldn't fathom the idea that the people they were targeting were just as American as them, and it was steeped in this crazy notion that anyone of Japanese ancestry had this racial loyalty to a country that most of the internees had never been to. The book tracks Takei's entire childhood in the camps, but it constantly cuts back to different points in his life after he was freed. These include his TED Talk at an event in Kyoto and his visit to the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Presidential Library, and after dinner chats with his father. And his relationship with his father forms the emotional core of the book. Even as George learns more about what happened to him and his family, it's still clear there's a disconnect between how the older generation view the internment versus the younger generation. And there's a scene when George is a teenager where he lashes out at his father and asking him, like, why didn't you fight back? You could have ended this, not understanding the depth and reality of the situation. There's another scene later on where, to help George get an idea of what American democracy is, his father takes him to the headquarters of a presidential campaign, and on that day they were visiting, Eleanor Roosevelt happened to be stopping by. And George shook her hand and he was so thrilled to meet her, but his father had to leave early because he couldn't look the woman whose husband imprisoned them in the eye. And he repeats this notion when he speaks at the Roosevelt Library. Another thing I loved is the artwork. It's all drawn in this very simple black and white style. The style actually reminded me a lot of Marjane Satrapi's Persepolis series, which I also highly recommend, also a very good graphic memoir. And it occasionally adopts an anime look to it, anime and manga look to it, tying it into the Japanese themes, which I thought was really cool. But what I really loved about it was how it can convey so much emotion in just the simplest of illustrations. I thought that was really neat. But I think the book's biggest strength is how it links the events of yesterday to today. Takei and his collaborators used techniques that I thought were very similar to the ones Spike Lee used in BlacKkKlansman to tell a story that, despite being set however many years ago, 70 years ago, about in this case, to tell a story that sadly feels just as relevant, if not more so today. And towards the end of the book, Takei points out the hypocrisy of politicians who condemn the internment of Japanese Americans, but continue to ignore or authorize the internment of people and children on the southern border. So even though the book does end on a hopeful, cautiously optimistic note, it's clear that we still have a long way to go. I'm going to avoid giving too much away because I do highly recommend that you read They Called Us Enemy for yourself. even if you're not a big comics fan, I feel like this is such a necessary and important book now, and who knows, it might even change a few minds. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're wondering about the part 2 of the readathon, it is coming. I'm almost done with this one book I'm reading. I should be done today or tomorrow. After that, I'll get right to work on the next video. This one isn't going to be in the next video, though. This is going to be in readathon part 3 after that, which this is the only book I know that's going to be on this list so far. And if you're interested in the laborious process of moving to another country, please check out my other channel. And I hope to see you soon. Read this book.